And look, sometimes I'll be head on to a story all day and breaking news happens at 3 p.m. And now I have an hour and a half to rush to the scene and improvise, not even improvise. I have to take a look at the scene, what's happening, and go live for 5. So it's like you never know what's going to happen during the day. Yeah, well, I've always been into behind the scenes camera work, producing. So I went to college, I went to Penn State, I studied film and communications. And then I really asked myself how I could be sort of this jack of all trades. How can I get into the world of telling stories, but also telling like important stories? So that was where my passion for journalism started. And then I just jetted off to the West Coast after I graduated. And I started off as a producer at KYMA and Telemundo 3. And that's really where I got my sense of like, this is what I want to do and how I want to tell stories. But I mean, it all just started with my passion for community. Bronx girl, born and raised. So I think it's important that you communicate and make relationships and sort of just adapt to that and come back and just tell the stories that really matter. I was looking to come back home. I had been on the West Coast for about almost 4 years. And I was like, I miss home and I want to come home. I didn't even have a real sense of like, am I going to keep doing news? I just knew that I had to get a fresh start. I asked God to lead and I was like, wherever it is that you need me to be, I want you to take me there. So I had a flight. Just so happens like it was a round trip that I had booked a few months before. And I was like, I might just make this permanent. So you ask for signs. And I feel like God listens. So before I had gotten this flight, I got a notification about my resume some way or somehow landing in the News 12 newsroom. I didn't send it anywhere. I don't remember, talking to anyone about connections there. But it just so happens that my resume landed at News 12. And I got a call and we did like a little chat, and I remember being asked, like, can you see us on the 19th? My flight was on the 18th that I had booked months before. I get on this plane. I am a mess. I'm, swollen eyes. I'm like going through what I'm going through. And I just sat there and I was like, I just want to be useful. So whatever it is that this journey is teaching me, I want to learn from it. And I got in my seat. I went to turn, put your phone on airplane mode. We're about to take off. And I'm really a big believer in manifestation. So I had the News 12 logo on my lock screen because if something's for you, it doesn't matter where you are. It's going to find you. It's going to be for you. So this young lady sits next to me and she looked at my screen. She was like, oh, you work at News 12. And I was like, no. I was like, no, I have an interview with them. And she was like, so funny. My mom works at the Long Island station. And I looked at her and I was like, huh? And she was like, no, yeah, my mom works at the Long Island station. That's so funny. I hope you get it. Then I didn't think how much of an impact that would have. Fast forward, I get the job and I'm training in Long Island and I'm working with her mom every day. And I've been working with her mom ever since. So my journey there has taught me to be patient and to be grateful for the good and bad times. So if I could describe my journalism career, it's betting on myself and betting on my faith that things will always work out the way that they need to. Yeah, it's not glamorous. And I think I tell that and I try to explain that to everyone who asks me like, oh, but like you know, like you get your hair done and your makeup done. And I'm like, that's not journalism. You go in every morning. Sometimes I don't know the story that I'm assigned simply because that's just our city. Things happen overnight. Things happen every day. Sometimes it's a follow-up story. But you go in and you don't really know what to expect. You know, there could have been a fire overnight that unfortunately had casualties. And now this is your focus. How can I be an asset to my community members? So I would say like my day to day is like coming in, checking in, seeing what my story is, right? Because we do pitch stories. That's our job as journalists as well, is to communicate with our community members and make sure that we're advocating for stories that matter. But sometimes it's just on a whim. You come in, there's like a shooting happened 2 hours ago, grab your gear. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get a photographer as an MMJ. But your job is to get your gear, get your assigned vehicle, head to the story and work. When you get there, your job is to make sure you get enough video of what's happening, but also to communicate with anyone on site. So what happened, how, you know, who, what, when, where, how is your main goal when you are on the field. We go, we shoot our content, we shoot our on cam as well. So we flip our little camera, we shoot our tags, come back to the station. You usually have a deadline. So if I'm in 10 to 7 and my story started at noon, I might as well maybe have a package for 5. So my job is to come back and execute that. I have to make sure I write my script. We also write the anchor intros, which I think a lot of people don't know. So like what the anchors say to introduce your package, we write that and we have to make sure that it's concise and factual. So we write, we edit our packages, as well as VOs and end of days. So like you want to make sure you leave content for the anchor to have for the next show, but also this might be a follow-up story. So if a reporter the next day is assigned this story, they need to have some sort of context to go off of what you did the day prior. So that's sort of like when you go back, it's like you're always on go. Like you have a deadline. If you have to contact for statements on your story, you know, if you didn't have time to do that before you left, you have to make sure you do that when you come back. So it's a lot of puzzle pieces for sure. And look, sometimes I'll be head on to a story all day and breaking news happens at 3 p.m. And now I have an hour and a half to rush to the scene and improvise, not even improvise. I have to take a look at the scene, what's happening, and go live for 5. It's like you never know what's going to happen during the day. I think when it entirely affects the community, like fires, I know there was a period of time where we saw a lot of fires here in the Bronx. Yeah. And it was important to tell those stories, right? What's going on? Why are there so many fires? You know, a lot of them were lithium ion battery caused, you know, like what's the conversation that we need to have here? But I think when you're reporting in your local community like the Bronx, anything that involves the gravity of a community member is considered breaking news. So we take that very seriously, which I think is a great, personality trait with our network that we have, is like no story is unimportant. So yeah, I think that's what breaking news is based on. But you just never know. A shooting, a fire, like it's heavy sometimes.